On September 14, 2008, Aeroflot Flight 821 crashed, killing all 88 people on board. The cause was not just bad weather or a mechanical fault, it was a series of critical mistakes. A drunk pilot, poor training, and communication failures all contributed to this tragic disaster. In this video, we will examine the events that led to the crash, the errors made by the crew, and the lessons that can help prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Stay with us to understand how small mistakes can lead to deadly consequences. Flight 821 was scheduled to depart just after 3 a.m., heading to Perm, a 2-hour journey away. The aircraft was a Boeing 737 Part 7 K5 plus 4 Boeings. It had twin engines and was capable of carrying 140 passengers. This particular plane had already flown over 44,000 hours across 35,000 flights and was about 16 years old. Originally used in China, the plane was leased to Aeroflot Nord, a subsidiary of Aeroflot Nord, earlier in 2008. On board were 82 passengers and 6 crew members, including Russian, Ukrainian, Iranian, and American citizens. Among them was a Russian military advisor close to President Dmitry Medvedev. The captain, 34-year-old Rudian Medvedev, had 3,689 total flying hours, including over 1,000 on the 737. The co-pilot, 43-year-old Rustem Alebin, had more flying hours, 8,710, but very limited time on the Boeing 737, only about 219 hours. Despite their experience, both pilots were still relatively new to flying Western aircraft like the 737, having spent most of their careers on older Soviet models like the Tupolev 134. As the crew conducted final preparations, several technical issues were noted. The autothrottle system was marked as inoperative, but the captain assumed it still worked and used it during the flight. Also, the traffic collision avoidance system, TCAS, was out of service, but the flight was allowed to proceed without it. Another serious error occurred before takeoff. The co-pilot entered incorrect coordinates into the navigation system. This caused a drift in the aircraft's position by 1 nautical mile. The Boeing 737 uses an inertial navigation system which relies on gyros to track its movement. However, these systems are not accurate over long periods unless corrected by GPS or ground-based navigation aids, neither of which were used on this flight. As a result, the aircraft's actual location would gradually drift further from what was shown on the navigation display, something the pilots did not fully understand or notice. Just before takeoff, some passengers noted that the captain's voice sounded strange. That is because earlier that night he had been out celebrating the birth of his child with heavy drinking involved. Somehow he passed the pre-flight medical check and no one questioned his fitness to fly. At 3:06 a.m., the plane took off into the night sky. About an hour into the flight, everything seemed normal, but as the aircraft approached Perm, poor weather conditions appeared. Light rain and fog, limited visibility, and the crew would have to rely on air traffic control to land safely. The co-pilot tried to load the approach route into the flight computer, but could not find it. He was unfamiliar with the process and needed help from the captain. This delayed the descent briefing, a standard procedure where pilots confirm landing plans together. At 4:40 a.m., the aircraft began descending. Air traffic control cleared them to descend step by step, first to 5,000, 1 meter, then to 4,500. But again, the co-pilot did not inform the captain of these changes, violating basic safety procedures. Worse still, the captain asked the co-pilot to handle radio communications, a task usually reserved for the supervising pilot. This added more stress to the already overwhelmed co-pilot. Soon, confusion about the landing approach made matters worse. Air traffic control told the crew to use a different arrival route than the one they had entered in the computer. The co-pilot panicked, struggling to reprogram the flight computer and asking the captain for help. The reason for the change? Another aircraft, a Lufthansa Airbus A319, was preparing to take off in the opposite direction. To avoid conflict, controllers switched Aeroflot Flight 801 to a longer, more complex route. Unfortunately, this was not clearly explained to the pilots, who were already struggling with language barriers. Many Russian pilots at the time had poor English skills, which made it hard to understand foreign manuals or air traffic instructions, especially in stressful situations. As they tried to adjust, the plane's navigation system, affected by the earlier error, showed them flying several kilometers away from their actual position. Still, no one noticed the growing discrepancy. At 5 a.m., the plane was instructed to descend to 600 meters. Only now did the crew clearly understand that they were supposed to land on runway 21. But as they prepared for the final approach, a major error occurred. The co-pilot accidentally pressed the trim switch on his control column, disconnecting the autopilot. The air traffic controller noticed this and instructed them to turn right and descend again. But by now, the captain was clearly overwhelmed and frustrated. Voice recordings later showed that his stress levels were very high, likely worsened by the effects of alcohol and fatigue. At 5:07 a.m., the captain tried to communicate with air traffic control again. During the exchange, he lost control of the yoke, causing the aircraft to bank sharply, first 15D, then over 50D. The warning system blared, bank angle, as the co-pilot struggled to stabilize the plane. But the co-pilot was not trained to handle asymmetric thrust or major system failures in this type of aircraft. As stress levels rose, both pilots began shouting over each other, with their heated arguments even reaching the air traffic controller through the radio. Eventually, the co-pilot stopped trying to control the aircraft and left it to the captain. Unfortunately, Captain Medvedev made a fatal error. He banked the plane to 76D, causing it to spiral out of control. At 5:10 a.m., just outside of Perm, Flight 821 crashed into the Trans-Siberian Railway, less than 200 meters from the nearest houses. All 88 people on board died instantly. The wreckage burned for hours, and local rescue teams rushed to the scene. In the days following the crash, there were many rumors. Some claimed the plane caught fire mid-air, others suspected terrorism due to the high-ranking official on board, but investigators found no trace of explosives or any signs of a missile strike. Instead, the black boxes told a different story. The engines were working until impact. The plane had no major technical faults. What investigators did find was shocking. The captain's blood alcohol level was between 0.05% and 0.1%, enough to impair judgment. Though he had technically rested for 15 hours before the flight, in the days prior, he had worked several long overnight flights, leaving him physically and mentally exhausted. Further checks revealed both pilots had very poor English proficiency. The captain's level was only considered acceptable, while the co-pilot's was even worse. Their training records were incomplete, and it was unclear how they were certified to fly the Boeing 737. The final report stated that the main cause of the crash was the crew's loss of spatial awareness during descent. They did not understand where they were or what their instruments were telling them. The pilots also lacked proper training on Western aircraft systems and procedures. Ultimately, the crash of Flight 821 was caused not by mechanical failure or weather, but by human error, poor training, and a shocking breach of responsibility. This tragedy serves as a haunting reminder that flying is not just about experience. It is about preparation, discipline, and responsibility. A drunk pilot, lack of communication, and confusion about basic procedures cost 88 lives. Let the story remind us that in aviation, even small mistakes can lead to devastating consequences. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more real aviation stories and in-depth analysis. Thank you for watching and stay safe in the skies.